This painting demonstration is about rendering the three planes that are typically found in a landscape painting: the foreground, the middle ground, and the background. The other ideas that I want to demonstrate are how to mass in the elements of the composition with minimal detail, and how to work the whole composition at once. Perhaps you're wondering, why do a tonal composition when there are so many wonderful colors to work with? Well, the foundation of any good painting is a good tonal structure. Doing tonal studies enables you to understand and translate your subject into its tonal elements. It allows you to navigate through a complex subject without worrying about the color structure. It allows you to move your paint and the compositional elements around the canvas with great ease. Tonal studies are often used as an underpainting. In essence, it's a preparatory ground for the colors to come. And finally, it enables you to avoid the anxiety that we all can feel when faced with an empty white canvas before starting a new painting. So, let's dive in. Here is my reference photo. It is early morning with mist rising up from a river. I personally enjoy working on images with fog and mist because of the lovely atmospheric effect. These are also excellent compositions for beginners because there's very little detail to bog you down. I start by quickly laying in a simple geometric outline of my subject. This is done with a lot of solvent mixed into my oil paint. No pencil or charcoal. Remember, this is a painting and not a drawing. I start with 3 tones of burnt sienna and white, mixing them out such that each tone will initially represent one of the planes of my landscape. I want to be able to clearly distinguish them right from the beginning and cover my canvas as quickly as possible. The 3 planes are massed in, starting with the background sky, then the middle ground trees, and finally the tree and its foreground. Here it is, my 3 picture planes, each distinct from the other, and my canvas is covered. This gives me a good initial view of the composition. Notice how the dark tone of the foreground creates a strong contrast with the middle ground and background, pushing them back into the distance. I could stop here and wait for this layer to dry, using it as an underpainting, upon which I could lay my colors. But I will continue onwards and use this as practice for creating a painterly study of a tree. If we look back at the photo, I've marked out how I initially interpreted it as a few abstract geometric elements. Simplifying reduces the composition down to its bare bones, and now I'm going to build it back up again. In this next stage, I add a few more tones to my palette. My first tones were important anchor points, separating the different planes. I mix out a few more tones within each tonal anchor point, taking care not to allow the intermediate tones to cross over into the other. I don't want to lose that strong tonal structure that I started with. I start by lightening the sky and distinguishing the distant tree lines. The area separating the middle ground trees and the foreground is fog rising up off of the riverbed. Now I turn my attention to the tree. To get the shape of the tree, I will cut into my tree with the different tones that surround it. In the next steps, I'm both pushing the tree tone out and then cutting back into it with surrounding tones until I'm satisfied with the way I have rendered it. I constantly refer back to my reference photo. I'm looking for patterns and rhythms in the foliage that will help me bring the shape together. I add some lighter tones for the foreground and darker tones for the shrubs. I've decided to leave an opening in the shrubs to allow the eye to wander into the scene. Next, I add the tree trunk and branches. By placing them on top of my tree silhouette, I've completely flattened out the tree. So now I'm going to go back into it again, allowing foliage to cover some of the branches, and I cut some more background tones in and around the branches and foliage. So here is my final landscape study. It took me about an hour to finish. Here are some key points to remember. The first is simplify. Work the whole canvas. Always focus on the large shapes and tones. Paint with broad, decisive strokes. It helps to use a large brush and step back from your painting. Remember, the aim of painting is not to copy, but to interpret. This is how your expressive potential shines through.